Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with coverage of round 6 of the 2018 Candidates Tournament. Played on Friday the 16th of March. These were the pairings. Fabiano Caruana was white against Alexander Grischuk, another USA-Russia clash. So played Aronian, Ding against Karyakin and Mamedov against Kramnik. I've been away for a few days, so I'm recording this video a few days after the round was played. Normally I post a video a few hours after the round is concluded. And I've seen on YouTube that many chess YouTubers have already covered the Aronian game and the Mamedov Kramnik game, but I haven't seen anybody cover the Caruana-Grischuk game, and it was quite an interesting battle. So I've decided to cover that game in this video. I'll show you the results of the other games later in the video. Caruana and Grischuk have played 12 classic games against each other. Caruana has won 2, Grischuk has won 3 with 7 draws, so quite evenly balanced. This is a picture of this game played in the Kühlhaus in Berlin in round 6 of the 2018 Candidates. Let's look at the game. Caruana opened with d4, knight f6 from Grischuk, c4, g6, knight f3, bishop g7 and e3. This pawn will later go to e4, and of course it can go there in one go. So in the press conference after this game, the players were asked, can you explain this loss of a tempo? First play e2, e3 and then e3, e4. And it was Grischuk who explained it was himself who had invented it as white and had played it for the first time in a classical game against Caruana with white. And it felt a bit strange to play against it with black this time. And he also called it one of his top 3 inventions. And he explained the idea behind e3 and then e4. He said that the point of e3 is that if black wants to play in the spirit of the Grunfeld defense, white gets a nice position. And he showed the following moves. He showed castling for black, as happened in this game, bishop e2 from white, and now in the spirit of the Grunfeld, black would play d5, which did not happen in the game. In the game, Grischuk, as black, played c5. But just to explain this idea, as Grischuk did, after d5, in the spirit of the Grunfeld, white takes, knight takes, e4, kicking the knight, knight back to b6, white castles, bishop g4, and then knight b d2, and Grischuk said this is indirectly defending the pawn on d4. Of course this pawn is attacked twice by bishop and queen, and only defended by the knight, so you might say this pawn is not defended, but if we look at the variations then we understand what Grischuk means. If you take that pawn with the bishop, that's a big blunder, because of knight takes d4, queen takes d4, and now your bishop on g4 is hanging. Bishop takes e4 is very good for white. So back to that position after knight b d2. Can you do something else? Can you first take on f3? Well, there's the point of putting the knight on d2. Now white takes back with his knight and defends the pawn 2 times. So through knight b d2, the pawn on d4 is indirectly defended, and Grischuk thought this was a nice setup for white, and that is the idea behind first e3 and then later e4. Let's go back to the game because Grischuk made another comment on this. So after e3, as said before, black castled, bishop e2, and instead of d5 Grischuk played c5 against his own system. d5 from Caruana, e6 and knight c3. And we have another Ben-Oni on the board, as we had in the previous round when Grischuk played black against Aronian. Ben-Oni means son of sorrow, and Grischuk mentioned in the press conference that he likes everything connected with sorrow, and that's why he likes to play the Ben-Oni, but we should not believe everything Grischuk says. Often he is just joking. Let's continue the game. E takes d5, c takes d5, d6, knight back to d2, knight a6, white castles, knight c7, and now e4. Rook e8, a4, rook b8, f3, a6, a5 and bishop d7. And it is this setup from black that is the reason that Grischuk stopped playing the e3 and then e4 line. But in fact, he said in a press conference, this position is quite unclear and it was very stupid of me to stop playing this system with white just because of this black setup. And he said he might pick it up again with white. Knight c4 from Caruana, bishop b5 from Grischuk, and now bishop g5, which called Grischuk a very good move, as what black wants to do is bring this knight back to d7. In this system that's an important move, and now he said he had a lot of difficulty to do this. Of course you can't do it straight away because the knight is pinned. And he said he managed finally to do this at the cost of a pawn, and we'll see how that unfolds. So bishop g5 is a good move. Grischuk took on c4, as he wants to free up his position somewhat with b5. B takes c4, there was b5. It was taken en passant by Caruana. Rook takes, knight a4, hitting the rook, and the rook went to b4. It's attacking the bishop, which is unprotected. So Caruana played b3. And Grischuk said it looks stupid to play the rook to b4. It stands nice there, but I can never play a move like knight b5, because then there is bishop d2 and this rook is trapped. But he said he had a concrete reason to play rook b4. He saw a number of lines that were leading to a draws position. And if we go back a few moves after knight a4, Caruana actually said that he thought rook b7 was a better move, a more accurate move, with the idea to play queen b8. But as said, Grischuk went to b4 and b3 was played by Caruana. Grischuk still wants to move his knight back to d7 as mentioned. He played queen c8 here to start that operation. He then said it was important not to play queen b8 instead, because after bishop f4 attacking the pawn on d6, he'll have to return to d8, so that doesn't work. But after queen c8 he had another idea. So he played queen c8 and bishop f4 came, and then Grischuk played queen d7 to protect the d6 pawn. Grischuk said this queen c8, queen d7 maneuver is a very modest way to play, very slow, to unpin the knight on f6, and he said you have to calculate many variations to make sure it works. Caruana said after queen d7 that he played a lot of Ben-Onis with black on the black side, and this version seems to be a great version for black, as normally you get blown away in this opening as black, but here white has to prove an advantage with a lot of very subtle moves. So Caruana thought that Grischuk had played this black side of the Ben-Oni quite well. One of those subtle moves is rook a2 and knight h5 from Grischuk. He said this is a critical position, but this move is just too deep. The bishop stepped back to e3 and then rook b8, preparing the knight jump to b5. Queen d2 from Caruana. There comes knight b5 and g4 was played by Caruana. Instead of g4, Grischuk saw another move. He said here that he thought he had a perfect position, but then he saw that white had knight takes c5, d takes and bishop takes c5, and he thought it was quite a good option for white, this piece sacrifice. Caruana replied that he considered it for a second, but that it looked so desperate that he did not want to spend any more time on it. So he did not play knight takes c5, he played g4, attacking the knight. Knight went back to f6 and knight b2, attacking the a6 pawn with the rook. The engine now wants to sacrifice on e4 or g4 with the knight. Grischuk did look at that move, he decided not to go for it. He played queen c8, protecting the pawn on a6 and freeing up the d7 square for that knight maneuver. He showed a nice variation here, that instead of queen c8 he could have played knight c3, That's quite a move, but if white takes it, queen takes c3, then black wins with knight takes g4, attacking the queen. If you play the queen to d2, then there is knight takes e3, queen takes e3, and black wins with bishop d4, because that is a lovely skewer. Black is winning. So that is after knight c3 and then queen takes c3, but instead of queen takes c3 there is rook takes a6, and that's the reason why Grischuk did not play knight c3. As said, he played queen c8, bishop f4, and Grischuk said this is pretty much forced, as otherwise black will get this knight d7 move in for free. Now he doesn't get it for free. He played knight d7, but now it is a pawn sacrifice. Another option would have been rook b6, just to protect the d6 pawn one more time. But then Grischuk said there is bishop d3, and he thought this was very good for white, and the engine agrees. Of course, white can also repeat moves after rook b6. He can play knight a4, attacking the rook, rook back to b8, and knight back to b2 if he wants. But knight d7 was played, a pawn sacrifice by Grischuk, and Caruana accepted the pawn. Of course, the pawn is still protected by the knight, but Caruana took the defender off. Bishop takes b5, a takes b5, and now he took that pawn on d6. White is a pawn up, but black has compensation. Grischuk first played rook b6, hitting the bishop. Bishop went back all the way to g3, and there comes the c-pawn, always one of black's trump cards in a Ben-Oni. If he can get c4 in, then he's probably doing well. But of course he's a pawn down, so he has to prove some compensation. Caruana took, Grischuk took back with the pawn, and is now threatening c3 with a fork. Black has compensation for the pawn. With his passed c-pawn supported by many pieces, and especially the bishop on g7 is a great piece. This piece does a great job on the long diagonal. Grischuk said, I thought I had great compensation for the pawn, but I had completely missed queen e2. Rook b4 is the absolutely only move not to lose. And indeed, Caruana played that move, queen e2. He could also have played knight d1. Grischuk said if white goes into passive mode, black has great compensation, and Caruana agreed. He said yes, this is very dangerous for white, and objectively it's okay for white, but practically it's great for black, added Grischuk. So queen e2 was played by Caruana. Rook b4, according to Grischuk, the only move not to get a bad position. And Caruana said, if I want to win this game, I have to play rook c1. And they looked at this variation, c3, attacking the knight, knight back to d1, and f5. And Caruana said, I could not figure out what was going on here. So instead of rook c1, he played bishop back to d6, attacking the rook. Rook went back to b6, attacking the bishop again. And Caruana said, I went for the move repetition as I wasn't sure if I had an advantage here. I had 1 minute on the clock, while Grischuk had about 7 minutes. I didn't think I was going to outplay him in a messy position like this. So Caruana decided to repeat moves. Bishop g3, rook b4 again, bishop back, rook back, bishop back. And here Grischuk claimed a draw, because after rook b4 we have the same position for the third time with the same player to move. Quite an exciting game, quite instructive, some of these moments, some of the explanations from the players were really instructive, but the game ended in a draw. The results of round 6, Caruana and Grischuk, we saw that game, it was a draw. So beat Aronian, big win for Wesley So, he's back in the tournament. Ding and Karyakin played a draw, and Mamedyarov beat Kramnik. Kramnik started with 2 wins in the first 3 games, but he's back on 50%. And Mamedyarov is joining Caruana in the lead. These are the standings after round 6. Indeed, we see Caruana and Mamedyarov a full point ahead of 3 players, Kramnik, Ding and Grischuk. Aronian and So are on -1, and Karyakin is at the bottom of the ranking with 4 draws and 2 losses. Round 7 will be played after the rest day. It will be played on Sunday, March 18th, and we'll see Grischuk against Mamedyarov, Kramnik, Ding, Karyakin, So, and Aronyan against Caruana. A very exciting lineup. And this concludes the first half of the tournament. In the second half, the players will play against each other in the same order, but with opposite colors. Again, apologies for posting this game a few days after the round was played. I was away for a few days, and my plan is to cover every round from now on till the end of the tournament on the same day as the round is played, as I did in the first 5 rounds. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the Chess 2 Impress channel, and please leave a comment. You also may want to check out my Chess 2 Progress channel. The link is in the description box. This is Rick for Chess 2 Impress. Thank you for watching.